shores of Brevard County are known the world over. Glistening waves and sun-kissed sand, icons of Florida's year-round vacation status. But our sunshine also illuminates a groundbreaking history.
1, 0, and lift off.
The place from which America aimed for the heavens, hoping to conquer the stars. Space, and the United States' place in it, is a story born on Central Florida soil. It's been a labor of love and struggle for more than 60 years. Tonight, the latest chapter in the odyssey of space and its impact on our lives.
Good evening, I'm Jim Payne. Right now, Brevard County and the Space Coast are thriving. Jobs, people, opportunity, all showing up in droves. But just 6 years ago, it was the exact opposite. When we all said goodbye to NASA's space shuttle program, the Space Coast faced a bleak reality. So what happened? How'd they turn it around so fast? And how big could this rebirth actually be? WESH 2 Chronicle uncovers all that's behind this Space Coast comeback.
We've gone for main engine start. We have.
April 12, 1981.
America's first space shuttle.
Columbia rumbles into the heavens, the first shuttle to fly, the first of 135 missions over 30 years. Challenger, Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour would join the fleet, carrying people and satellites into orbit, conducting cutting-edge research, and building the International Space Station. Yet the people who built it knew it wouldn't last forever.
It's not like we woke up one day and looked out and we lost it. But what we were given was a heads up.
The heads up came in 2004 in a speech by President George W. Bush.
In 2010, the space shuttle, after nearly 30 years of duty, will be retired from service.
When it was over, the end of the shuttle era would be a gut punch for Brevard County. First, the loss of 10,000 space shuttle jobs, about 8% of the area's workforce. But when the full impact of the shuttle program's demise actually hit, 20% of the available jobs were wiped out, more than 30,000 altogether. Shuttle-related job losses started at the same time as the Great Recession, a disastrous double whammy no one could have predicted.
The final liftoff of Atlantis.
But well before Atlantis made her final launch on July 8, 2011, before men and women who dedicated their grit and sweat to the shuttle program, before they gave their life's work one last wave and a kiss goodbye, something else was launching. A plan to save the Space Coast.
And we all realized how this was going to affect our community. And so I think when we were all working together, we said we can do this.
No comeback just happens. It's plotted, planned, negotiated, constructed. And these were some of the crucial architects.
To keep that community together.
Marcy Murphy, now president of Career Source Brevard, where Brevard County matches people with job opportunity.
Well, we're preparing for a day.
Frank DeBello, head of Space Florida, a space industry veteran with decades of financial experience to boot.
We've got to do it cheaper, we've got to do it faster and quicker.
Linda Weatherman, CEO of Space Coast Economic Development Commission, courting the companies who make or break the local economy. WESH 2 brought the trio back together to talk about the opportunity they found despite the adversity. We recently met at the Cocoa Beach Pier, where surf and sand greet you on one horizon, and on the other, the unmistakable Kennedy Space Center holds your gaze. They told me the first step was recognizing the end was coming.
Do you think you would be where you are right now if space shuttles were still flying?
You know, it gave us something to point to say, look, it's happening. There's a tsunami. I think we called it a tsunami after a while. You know, there's a tsunami coming, heading our way. Are we going to stand here and not do anything, or are we going to do something about it?
In 2007, Space Florida gave then Workforce, now Career Source Brevard, a grant to study the impact of the loss of the shuttle program on the community. Who would lose their jobs, what skills they had, and what would be the ripple effect beyond NASA.
We went to Michigan and we looked at the automobile industry. We looked at Eastern Airlines layoff. We went to North Carolina and looked at the tobacco and furniture industry and how they changed it over to high tech, and we looked at all those events that happened in the United States to see if we could learn from them.
In short, Brevard County leaders did their homework and pulled all they could from other communities who face similar industry loss. But they also braced for what many feared would be the economic catastrophe the community saw when the Apollo program ended in the early 1970s. Linda Weatherman recalled one of the most powerful meetings she had in planning for what was coming.
It was a meeting with the Salvation Army because we got together with them and they were saying, we don't know what's going to happen because this, you know, there are going to be people that are going to be unemployed that have never been unemployed in 30 years. And we were preparing. And we were prepared. That's how deep we got in preparing for this. To sit down with the Salvation Army and see what are we going to do when these people come to the food bank.
Preparation and communication. These three and others talked to each other, to the companies and shareholders who had the dollars and the jobs. And they found the money, state and federal, needed to invest in a future they deeply believed was possible. Maybe their biggest accomplishment of all, over time, they got everyone, competing companies included, into the same room and onto the same page before it was too late.
And then we were allowed to meet with the companies one-on-one to develop their trust and for them to understand that we were there to help them out.
The team turned the loss of the shuttle on its head because the Space Coast still had what it would take to get to space. Their first success, winning the contract to bring the Orion launch vehicle project to the Space Coast, which will put people back in space and to Mars in the 2030s.
Lift off the Falcon 9.
Fast forward from that first deal, and we have SpaceX, Blue Origin, OneWeb, all laying roots along the coast. The team was, and still is, hungry.
There are new launch vehicles that we can go after. There is a growing commercial space sector that we didn't have before. We just have to be smart enough to go and capture it.
And we had a lot to build on. We have a workforce that is respected. We had a lot of technology base in the state already with the simulation and modeling community that's in Central Florida. There's a strong engineering component throughout this region. We have created a culture of innovation around the university system and in the community that is shared by even the average citizen in this area. It impacts our schools, it impacts our workforce. That culture of innovation is what companies want to come and attract and participate in. And that's going to set us well for spawning new companies, new industries.
All told, these three have toiled to create countless programs, deals, and opportunities that today lay as the foundation for this turnaround. Unemployment in Brevard County at the end of 2017 sits at 3.5%. That's practically the lowest it's been in 2 decades. And it's not just deals and contracts for this team. Brevard County is their home as well.
At the heart of it is the quality of life that is in the community. And if we don't, as a region, build communities that will allow companies that come here and the people that work for them to thrive and feel at home and enriched by living here, we will have missed the boat.
They were all in it, for better or worse, together, fighting for opportunity. But this is just the beginning, because this trio will not forget the depths from which they just climbed.
No, I remember going on TV and talking about, Brevard County schools. We talked about this. One of the best school districts in America, and having to shut schools down because people are leaving it, and people, closing up their businesses and leaving the mall. And 10 years later, to have this transformation it really is a remarkable feat.
I challenge to find another economy that's going through this right now. Again, it's it's a true transformation. It's not just a transactional, company relocation. It's a transformation economy in such a short amount of time. And that's because, we were smart enough working together and try to take advantage. It wouldn't have come here. The last thing I want is people to think that, this would have happened magically. It is a dogfight every day to get these companies here. And as much as we might be number 2, I guarantee you Colorado wants to be number 2 and if not number 1. And it's California who might be number 1 right now. And you think they're going to bleed industry? They're not going to. So we need to understand, while this is a wonderful story, we have to fight to mitigate the job losses that are going to continue, whether it's other companies that are coming and going, but also to make sure that we retain what we have, sustain what we have, and also to get more. But what Frank was able to do and Marcy was able to do along with us as partners is we transformed an economy in a short period of time, and I don't think it's happening. You can see economies transforming. It'll take you 1 generation or 2. We've done it in about 6 years, 6 to 10 years, and that's unheard of.
So what you're seeing is the world's largest and first high-volume production satellite facility.
It's a new era of space, and the major players are calling Central Florida home. We're taking you inside the plans and companies investing in the Space Coast for a look at how our community will help shape the future of space. Plus, the problem with success.
I mean, I have companies saying, hey, we're gonna add 300 or 400 jobs in the next year or two. How many people can you send us?
Skilled workers are in big demand. The plan's coming together to teach, train, and employ a whole new workforce as quickly as possible.
As soon as we start launching Americans on American spacecraft again, which is within a year and a half, 2 years, you are going to see everybody in America is going to be so excited. It's happening again, and the Cape is coming alive again.
This decade has been one of change on the Space Coast, unlike any since the 1960s. The days of the golden age, the era of the space race. Now there's a new race. It's a race to turn a profit by building on the work of the great pioneers of 50 years ago. WESH 2's Dan Billow shows us what new space looks like, why it's growing, and how it's changing Central Florida.
A willingness to make mistakes, to take risks, to walk before running may be what best sets new space apart from old space. No one personifies the new space attitude better than Elon Musk, founder of SpaceX and pioneer of reusable rockets.
I think it's another step towards the stars. In order for us to really open up access to space, we've got to achieve full and rapid reusability. And being able to do that for the primary rocket booster is I think, going to be a huge impact on cost.
Cost. New space advocates say lower costs mean more launches, more profit-making opportunities, and more jobs. In the old days, 20,000 people worked at the Kennedy Space Center, and probably another 20,000 more at the Cape. Although the number of space workers today is still fewer, most are working for profit, not for the government or its contractors.
NASA used to build and own the rocket. They managed the program to get Americans to low Earth orbit in the International Space Station. Now, the model is going over to not just delivering cargo to low Earth orbit commercially, like the FedEx of space, but also delivering crew there as well, providing them rides back and forth to low Earth orbit. And this enables the NASA mission, which is to go beyond low Earth orbit.
Retired astronaut Chris Ferguson is leading Boeing's effort to build the first profit-making spacecraft to launch human beings. It's called the Starliner, and it looks like a 60s-style space capsule. It also has one other similarity to a government-built craft. It's years behind schedule.
Next year's looking really good. I'm very optimistic that you're going to see humans leaving from the Space Coast here in late 2018.
Not 2019, because I keep hearing it's going to slide into 2019.
We're pushing as hard as we can to keep everything where it belongs in 2018.
The Starliner is designed to be cheaper and safer than old-fashioned spaceships, and it'll be reusable after its parachute landings on land, not water. NASA will pay Boeing and its Kennedy Space Center workforce to ferry astronauts to and from the International Space Station. Right now, taxpayers are paying Russia $76 million per astronaut for flights upstairs. As for safety,
well, one thing that this vehicle has that the space shuttle did not is has an abort system. So, I mean, loosely translated, that means it's an ejection seat for a rocket.
An explosion of a SpaceX rocket last year showed just how important that rescue capability can be. Rockets do explode. In the case of this Falcon 9, it blew up at a time when astronauts would have been aboard, had this been a launch countdown. They would have needed an escape system.
2, 1, launch.
And SpaceX demonstrated such a system last year. Rockets on the spacecraft accelerate the crew up and away from the rocket. The craft and crew parachute to safety. SpaceX is also, along with Boeing, planning to make money launching astronauts to the space station. And it's still a question whether its Dragon ship or Boeing's Starliner will launch first.
Of course we want to be first. I think I'll call it healthy competition. I think we both push each other, both technically and schedule-wise. So in the end, I think that the taxpayer and the government benefits.
The Atlas rocket that will launch the first Starliner is about finished, but both companies need to pass a lot more inspections from NASA before the space agency will risk its astronauts on these privately built ships. In the meantime, SpaceX is making money launching satellites, setting a record in 2017 for the number of launches by a commercial company. And now, for the first time, the Space Coast, Brevard County, is not just in the launch business, it's in the satellite manufacturing business.
So these are offices.
Greg Weiler, the founder of OneWeb, took me on a tour of the company's new satellite factory on Merritt Island.
In here is production. So you're going to see there's an airlock down the end. And the airlock is where all the equipment comes in.
Not only is OneWeb the first satellite company on the Space Coast, it'll probably be the first company in the history of the space age, anywhere, to produce 900 finished satellites in the same building.
So what you're seeing is the world's largest and first high-volume production satellite facility. It's purpose-built to produce these satellites at a very high volume. We can produce up to 4 satellites per day in this facility.
Construction at this site began just last March, and they expect the first satellite to come off the line in April, just over a year later. OneWeb is turning the satellite world on its ear, doing it a new way, filling the sky with satellites.
We're building a constellation of satellites to provide high-speed internet access to the entire world, literally to cover the emerging markets where half the people in the world are without access, and also the rural populations of America.
In something of an odd twist, OneWeb does not plan to launch its satellites from the Space Coast. In fact, it can't. They'll be in orbits that are not accessible from here. So why build satellites in Brevard County where they've never been built before?
We're building here because the base of workers are here. The capability, the talent is really high because of what you've got going on in Melbourne and the Space Coast. You know, the thing about Brevard County and the thing about Florida that is wonderful is you can find great communities to live in. You can get paid well and buy a house that's not not millions of dollars, yet still is on the water and still is near great communities with good schools and soccer and all the other features that you would want for your family. So it's a really great community for people to come and work.
The $70 million factory will provide 125 jobs, but indirectly, it'll bring more.
We've had our vendors and our suppliers, actually many of them are starting to move towards the area around us in order to be a part of our supply chain.
Once the company builds its own 900 satellites, which it says will take only a few years, it'll start building more satellites for other companies or for the government or for research institutions. And to launch those, it may look no further than across the street. The New Glenn rocket will be built in the same neighborhood as OneWeb in Blue Origin's new factory. It is the first rocket factory on the Space Coast. Until now, rockets have always been built in California or Colorado or Alabama, along with a handful of other places. The brains and the bucks behind Blue Origin is Jeff Bezos, and you've probably bought something from him. He built Amazon.com. And now he builds rockets.
You know, you don't choose your passions choose you. And for me, space is something that I have been in love with since I was 5 years old.
Take a look at where the 3-stage New Glenn stands in the pantheon of rocketry. It's far bigger than the 23-story Falcon 9 or its big sister, the Falcon Heavy. In fact, it's every bit as tall as the iconic 38-story Saturn V, and it's reusable. In fact, this November 2015 test landing in West Texas beat even SpaceX. It was a first. And when New Glenn starts launching for real in 2020, it'll be able to carry a human spacecraft called New Shepard, also reusable, the largest of its kind.
Beautiful.
Wow.
The factory is just reaching completion, and Bezos is hiring 300 people to work in the new space industry. The right people.
If you're not passionate about space, go figure something else out to do, because this business is too hard if you're not passionate about it.
So now we have another problem, which is addressing the talent shortages that we have here in all industries.
It's a reversal of fortunes. Right now, the Space Coast has too many jobs and not enough workers. We're getting an up-close look at the programs in play to change that. And later,
Orion will not be going to Mars because it can't.
Mars? The moon? There's some serious competition brewing in Brevard County to be the first to launch Americans again. Our space expert breaks down who may win this next space race.
What's the biggest growing pain?
Talent workforce shortage, that's the biggest one. Bottom line, and it's not just in engineering and manufacturing, it goes all the way down to construction. It's all industries right now, there's a talent shortage out there.
It's a unique and challenging problem to have. More jobs than there are people to do them. Companies that have come to the Space Coast are fighting hard for workers, ones with special sets of skills. But what do you do if you can't find them? You grow them. Michelle Imperato shows us all that's being done to teach and train the new space workforce.
There's a movement on the Space Coast.
So what it has to do now is heat up.
To get a new generation trained and ready to enter industries like manufacturing and machining that desperately need a workforce.
It seems like for a long time, college was the only path. And even though people knew that there still is a working class, they still, didn't train them.
Mary McCormick is teaching high school students how to use state-of-the-art machining technology, 3D printers, lathes, and mills, and the basics of the industry like welding and soldering. It's STEM education coming to life at Bayside High School in Palm Bay.
If I can get them to a certain level, I know they'll get a job. I mean, I have companies saying, hey, we're going to add 300 or 400 jobs in the next year or two. How many people can you send us?
The course is specifically designed to fill the growing need in our own backyard. Aerospace companies relocating to or building production facilities in Brevard County need workers and fast. Over the next decade, nearly 3.5 million manufacturing jobs will likely need to be filled nationwide, and experts say nearly 2 million won't because of the lack of skilled workers. Bayside is just one example of how the county has taken an active role in making sure employers are getting their most valuable resource, employees, from right here in Central Florida.
It's all now about building the talent pipeline here in Brevard County, starting with middle school, actually elementary school, middle school, and high school, building that talent pipeline.
17-year-old Devin DeLuge is learning how to solder, a skill that will help the high school junior land his dream job working under the hoods of BMWs. He has his foot in the door at a local dealership, but this class and others like it are creating opportunity.
And I went there and I told them that my goals were to be hired there in the mechanics area. And so they were like, yeah, go to UTI. And so I was like, all right. And so when I graduate, while I'm working at BMW, I go to UTI to study the mechanics route. And then I come back and they said that they'd put me right in their shop.
This year, McCormick students are even working on a project for NASA.
Our assignment is to make a locker stud that goes in a stowable locker that'll go up on the International Space Station.
To be able to know that we have some of the best technology that NASA and larger companies are using, it's like an awesome achievement to be able to be in this class and be successful in it.
When students finish the course, they're certified production technicians, trained in safety, quality, maintenance awareness, and manufacturing and processes. The program at Bayside High is only in its second year, but with investments from across the county and state, local STEM education has exploded.
I've worked in a lot of machine shops, and this is the coolest machine shop I could have ever imagined if I could design one myself.
A quick 30 minutes up I-95 at Oak Alley High School, students are also preparing to launch right into local careers in aviation.
This is the time to get into aviation. The need's there, the jobs are there. The industry right now is in bad shape as far as the number of mechanics out there. Since our kids complete a program with certification, they can move right into a job. This is a pilot student.
William McInnish teaches aviation assembly and fabrication. He's a retired Navy veteran who worked on helicopters, Falcon jets, and planes during the war. Now he brings those skills to the classroom in Brevard County.
I am a triple retiree. I do this because I love it. and I love working with the kids, and I love seeing them be successful.
Students work on real planes and a helicopter, putting them together and taking them apart, learning the mechanics, instruments, tools, and safety. Students leave Mr. Mack's course as certified entry-level mechanics. They could make 30 grand right out of high school. Some companies even offer scholarships for workers to continue to get their education, to get their airframe and power plane license, meaning they'll make even more money.
Yeah, just go like that.
An average of nearly $48,000 a year. That's what the future holds for 17-year-old Destiny Fox.
But when I actually found out that I wanted to be an aircraft mechanic after joining this class, it's life-changing. I mean, the opportunities that we get here are unbelievable.
One of those opportunities, an eye-opening 3-week internship at Embraer, seeing the real pressures of the workplace.
I learned a lot more about the aviation background and what they do there in general.
This is not a car. You can't pull off the side of the road and fix something. It has to be right the first time. Everything they do is critical. Everything they do either saves lives or takes lives. They've got to do it right.
Right now, Mr. Mack teaches his classes in an old locker room and outdoor areas of the school, but not for long.
And you can see the first part of this is classroom with 27 computers, flight simulators are here, large printers back over here, and then you move out into the hangar, and in the hangar we can hold 3 airplanes and our helicopter can be in the hangar.
The district and state are funding and building a nearly $900,000 hangar at O'Galley, investing in the students who are the next generation of Space Coast talent and labor. Many companies already up and running can't wait for high school kids to fill their open positions. That's where CareerSource Brevard comes in, helping with long and short-term employment needs by working with local colleges like Eastern Florida State. Eastern State created the Aviation Maintenance Technician program, filtering graduates into jobs. There are 2 courses in that program that take 21 months to complete. The cost? $15,000. And CareerSource helps job seekers find training based on what's needed in the industry at that time. Short-term courses are typically less than 4 months long and mix online learning and hands-on training. They've helped people get certified as solderers, welders, and production technicians, all jobs in high demand.
It was actually kind of blind luck with CareerSource.
Cliff Nichols is starting his second chance at 33 years old.
Nichols spent 8 years working in security, but with a baby on the way, he knew he needed to find a career path instead of just another job. He had some background in manufacturing, so he was able to land a job here at Diamondback Firearms in Cocoa. But after just 5 months, he was laid off and found himself searching for a career path once again.
The Melbourne native signed up for information from CareerSource Brevard to check out job openings in the area. One day, he got an email about an 11-week training program for computer numerical control machines, also known as CNC machines. The automated machines are used across the manufacturing industry and can do so much, like cut, shape, and grind a variety of materials. They run on coded instructions, but someone has to operate the machine. It was a perfect fit. He applied for a scholarship program through CareerSource Brevard, filled out the proper paperwork. Since he was laid off, the course was free, and it led Nichols to a job before he even finished the classes. Now, he operates a CNC machine for SeaDeck in Rockledge, making customized padding for boat decks.
It's a big company, but it's got that feel of a real tight-knit, family-oriented company. And it fits awesome with my schedule because I also coach football at Titusville High School. So we work from 4:30 to 3 o'clock, and then I can go to practice, and we get Fridays off, so I really enjoy that too.
Healthcare, 401k?
Healthcare is good. 401k is awesome. Good time off. You know, I think overall it's a phenomenal company to work for.
Nichols is already planning to go back for more training so he can move up in his new career and his company, filling the void of skilled workers.
It melts it on.
And one day, young students in Brevard like Devin,
Can you go to the other toolbox?
Destiny, and their classmates will do the same.
It was the largest piece of property that's set right in the middle of our community that it screamed blight.
It's not all about space on the Space Coast. How a community that once thrived because of NASA is finding its way in the new economy.
And what you will see eventually is from West Orlando all the way east to the Cape, all the way south to Palm Bay, you will see this triangle of high technology industry that will be truly a phenomenal concentration, and that's going to be right here at home.
Highly skilled and good-paying jobs are back in Brevard County with more on the way. Each of those workers needs homes, cars, groceries. They want shopping, restaurants, and entertainment. And that's how the entire community cashes in on a comeback.
Bringing some big city to the small town, you know? We're uptown now.
I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Two longtime Brevard County neighbors are thrilled with what's taking shape in their community. One is a realtor, the other a former county commissioner. And both know how far we've come and how fast this reversal of fortune has taken shape.
It was the largest piece of property that's set right in the middle of our community that it screamed blight.
Robin Fisher is talking about the old Miracle City Mall in Titusville.
And J.C. Penney was really the last tenant that kind of, besides the hot dog guy, that left, major tenant.
Dave's Hot Dog Stand, an icon. WESH 2 was there in 2013 when it, too, came to an end. It was about this time that all across Brevard County, communities were coming to grips with the larger impact of losing the shuttle. For Titusville, it meant losing the tourists who came to see the shuttle's launch, all the people employed by NASA, and the businesses those workers supported. For every shuttle program job lost, it's estimated 2.5 more jobs were lost in the greater Brevard County community. That's 20,000 jobs on top of the 8,000 at NASA.
When you've got a 365,000 square foot 1960 mall that's got one tenant in it and half the roof is falling down, it just said that this town was dying.
Robin Fisher wasn't ready to read Titusville its last rites.
I got in the car one Saturday, drove up to Lake City, Florida, and met the mall owner, developer, and asked him what his intentions are, that this was screaming blight in our community and we really needed to do something about the site. He said, when J.C. Penney leaves, we're just going to put a fence around it and try to sell it. If things were going to be successful here, we had to do things different. And the first thing we had to do was stop totally dependent upon across the river, the Space Center. And we had to realize that nobody was going to save us, that we're going to have to save ourselves.
Fisher, it turns out, is one heck of a salesman.
And I went around with a package of Miracle City Mall, vacant, and asking developers would they consider coming to Titusville and open the mall. And they looked at me and said, aren't you losing 8,000 jobs? This is the worst economy I've ever been in. No, thank you. But I just kept going and going until we finally found one. And we rolled the clock ahead, and this was what we got, and we're pretty proud of it. And it kind of really changed the city.
He's talking about Titus Landing, rising up where Miracle City had fallen down. The open-air concept shopping center is marrying department stores, restaurants, entertainment, even health care.
This community spends money and goes shopping, but they've been going to other areas of the region. And that was part of what we showed Hobby Lobby, part of what we showed Bell's and all that, is that our people shop. We just don't have much options here.
Titus Landing is part of the ripple effect of Brevard County fighting for its life. For Titusville, that came as the North Brevard Economic Development Zone, and even that was a fight. Not everyone was on board with cutting deals and giving breaks to companies to come to town. Then County Commissioner Fisher championed the idea and got the plan off the ground.
Because you can't do anything without funds. You know, I mean, you can have all the grand plans in the world, but you got to have dollars to allow you to do things. And so we created a vehicle that gave us money that we can incentivize Blue Origin. We can incentivize someone to take a blighted mall and go do something about it. We could incentivize OneWeb. We can incentivize Embraer. And so having that zone allow us to do things that we probably wouldn't have been able to do if you didn't have dollars.
The old saying goes, you have to spend money to make money. The EDZ was cutting deals so companies might not pay as much tax or maybe take advantage of state and federal programs. It was a gamble that so far appears to be paying dividends.
We're hearing somewhere between 700 and 800 jobs when you start taking all the different tenants and their employees and stuff. So, yeah, so you create 700 jobs, you create a new tax base on a piece of property that wasn't bringing you any tax base, and at the same time, all this construction have created jobs too. And so now people drive by and go, I never thought it was going to happen, but good job, Robin.
It is a hot market, low inventory, prices going up since January about 10%.
Another byproduct of the Space Coast comeback, houses are in demand across Brevard County right now. But 5 years ago, Realtor Lynn Jones was swimming in inventory, homes underwater, in foreclosure, and short sales.
When jobs were not prevalent, I mean, everything just came to a standstill.
Just as Miracle City Mall crumbled, Brevard County's real estate market became one of the worst in the nation. And by 2012, the Palm Bay, Melbourne, Titusville metro area led the U.S. in foreclosures, and home values were dropping. That same year, the average house sold for just shy of $150,000. That's what makes our trip to Egret's Landing in Merritt Island so remarkable. Today, the homes here can't go up fast enough, and so are the prices. Average cost now to buy a home in Brevard County, $215,000. That's a 43% increase in 5 years.
This is just incredible to me that this has happened in 6 months or a little bit more.
Incredible because Egret's Landing is just shy of a sellout. At the start of 2018, they'll clear more land and start selling Phase 2 at a cost well above $300,000. New companies coming to Brevard County mean new jobs.
The spacecraft is right up there.
Senator Bill Nelson, one of Brevard County's biggest cheerleaders, recognized that ripple effect recently when we met at Kennedy Space Center.
You take, for example, Blue Origin, their rocket manufacturing facility. They will employ 550 people in this facility, but they know they need to expand. You take right across the street, the OneWeb satellite company that's going to put up 2,000 refrigerator-sized satellites. They will employ another 250 people. Now, you just start replicating that throughout the economy. SpaceX, all the other launchers here, in addition to the NASA program, which is eventually to go to Mars. You add up all of those, and that's why you're seeing the spring in everybody's step.
Spring in their step and money in the bank. Now they'll need someplace to live.
When they come in from those jobs, they want to establish right away into the community. They want to get the kids in school. They want to be convenient to that job location reasonably. They want to fall in love with the area. I mean, they want to pull up in front of a house like this that's brand new and go, this is it. This is Florida living. This is what I want. This is why I'm moving here.
Jones, who's the president of the Space Coast Association of Realtors, has been in Brevard County for more than 30 years.
I think the jobs are more stable because of our whole county growth. And I mean, the jobs and the manufacturing's coming in. The port is the second largest in the country, soon probably to be #1.
And Jones makes a key point. The growth of other industry, whether it's divesting itself of a connection to space or operating as a complement to that industry, seems to be a line all of Brevard County is boldly walking.
There's such a mixture here. It's hard to put your finger on it and say, well, it's this job or it's this company, or, you know, it's just that whole combination of good things happening.
The whole thought of going beyond low Earth orbit and living at a deep space gateway on the other side of the moon for periods of time is just amazing. I love it.
But will it happen? Next, we explore when and who will be the first to go where no human has ever been.
It's the human being defying all of the extraordinary danger of going into space that absolutely rivets the attention of people.
With a new 21st century space industry taking root, what is America's future in space? And how does it involve us in Central Florida and along the Space Coast? NASA's current goal is to send men and women to Mars. WESH 2 space expert Dan Billow looks at how and when that could happen and whether private industry will beat NASA to the red planet.
Landing gear down and locked. Main gear touchdown.
July 21st, 2011, just before dawn. Commander Chris Ferguson sets the Space Shuttle Atlantis on the runway.
Having fired the imagination of a generation, a ship like no other, its place in history secured, the Space Shuttle pulls into port for the last time.
Within 4 years, NASA said that day, we would be launching Americans again from the Space Coast.
But 4 years turned into 5, and 5 years turned into 6, and here we are in 2017, still relying on the Russians to ferry our astronauts to the International Space Station at a cost per seat that now stands at more than $76 million.
Vice President Mike Pence chairs the newly reconstituted National Space Council, a body of industry and government leaders, including former astronauts, that's charged with putting America's space exploration efforts back on track. Spiffy animation of NASA's new mega rocket is a window on the future, but it should be the present. Its original launch date was November 2017, and the rocket still doesn't even exist in real life. Although NASA now says it is working toward a December 2019 launch date, the agency acknowledges that the middle of 2020 is more likely for the rocket's first unmanned test launch.
And in recent years, the clarity of our purpose and the confidence of our conviction that propelled the United States to be a vanguard of space exploration seems to have waned. America seems to have lost our edge in space.
At the Kennedy Space Center, NASA is spending $400 million a year to support the new mega rocket called the Space Launch System, or SLS. A huge new propellant tank is in place, tested with truckload after truckload of liquid oxygen. Launch Pad 39B has been rebuilt. Recently, workers and managers signed their names to the final bricks in the pad's flame trench, designed to channel the furious thrust of the SLS.
4, 3, 2, 1.
The SLS solid rocket boosters are adapted from the space shuttles.
And we have ignition of NASA's Space Launch System solid rocket motor powering us on our journey to Mars.
So are its huge main engines. The Orion spacecraft, built to launch on the SLS rocket and to carry people to Mars, is undergoing every test imaginable.
3, 2, 1, release.
The astronaut who landed that last space shuttle, he's watching.
Boy, what a healthy program we have going on out there as well. A complete revamping of one of the key bays in the vehicle assembly building to accommodate what will eventually be a 380-foot rocket. You know, the whole thought of going beyond low Earth orbit and living at a deep space gateway on the other side of the moon for periods of time is just amazing. I love it.
The SLS rocket's first test flight in 2019 or 2020 will catapult the Orion spacecraft all the way to the moon. With its second flight, not till sometime around 2023, the U.S. could begin the establishment of a base near the moon, floating in space, or on the moon itself, which seems to be the preference of the Trump administration. From there, the United States heads to Mars in the mid-2030s.
Orion's okay for the moon. It's just another Apollo, and we did just fine with that. I've been there, I know.
Okay, Houston, as I stand out here in the wonders of the unknown at Hadley, I try to realize there's a fundamental truth to our nature.
Al Worden's trip to the moon was in 1971 as the command module pilot of Apollo 15.
Just the surface top is exposed, but the boulder must be about a meter long.
Al Worden doesn't sound greatly impressed with NASA's grand plans.
It's kind of a repeat of the Apollo program. The SLS is sort of like the Saturn V. It'll carry a little bit more, has a little bit more thrust. The Orion is an Apollo spacecraft on steroids. It's a little bit bigger. It'll carry 4 people instead of 3.
But as for going all the way to Mars?
Orion will not be going to Mars because it can't. Orion is built for 4 people for 21 days. And a Mars flight is going to take a year and a half, so that's not going to work. I think there's going to be some other things they'll have to do, probably leave it in Earth orbit or something, and they'll send the crew to Mars in a habitat, and they'll have a lot more room to work with than in a little spacecraft.
Is there a better way?
I mean, we should have a lunar base by now. What the hell's going on?
Elon Musk is doing something about it. The founder of SpaceX and designer of the pioneering Falcon 9 rocket plans to send tourists on a trip around the moon in 2018. That'll be the job of the new Falcon Heavy. 3 Falcon 9s bolted together and targeted for a test launch in early 2018. Musk, who once launched a wheel of cheese, is hinting he may put a Tesla Roadster in the cargo space of the rocket and launch it on a billion-year flight to deep space. But longer term, he's got his sights on Mars, and for that he's building what he calls the BFR. Knowing Musk, that probably stands for something like Big Freakin' Rocket. It'll be the biggest rocket ever launched, more powerful than the Saturn V moon rocket. For scale, if you look hard, you can see how small you would look if you were standing next to it. Musk introduced the BFR to the world in a recent speech in Australia.
You want to be inspired by things. You want to wake up in the morning and think the future's going to be great. And that's what being a spacefaring civilization is all about.
The BFR is all about reusability. The passenger ship it carries is so large that if you put it on a football field, its tail would rest in an end zone and its nose on the 50-yard line. It could be used to transport people or fuel, and that's important because Musk doesn't think there's a way to get to Mars without reusability and fuel. Lots of fuel.
You need ultimately thousands of ships and tens of thousands of retanking or refilling operations, which means you need many launches per day.
BFR, because of its size, would make all that much easier. After launch, the booster returns to the Kennedy Space Center and almost immediately launches another spaceship, carrying fuel to the ship already in orbit. That ship would have 40 cabins, 40, to carry about 100 Mars colonists, to start building a city.
Then build up the base, starting mostly with one ship, then multiple ships, then start building out the city, then making the city bigger.
And Musk says he can pay for it all, with satellite launches of his Falcon 9 from the Space Coast, and with BFR passenger service on Earth, flying people anywhere on this planet in under an hour.
We've already started building the system. The tooling for the main tanks has been ordered. The facility is being built. We will start construction of the first ship around the second quarter of next year, so in about 6 to 9 months, we should start building the first ship. I feel fairly confident that we can complete the ship and be ready for a launch in about 5 years.
The first Mars crew would launch in 2024, about the same time NASA would be launching its very first SLS crew for a trip around the moon and back. Remember, they laughed at Musk when he said he could land a rocket. They're not laughing anymore. And they may have laughed at Blue Origin founder and Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos when he said he could put hundreds of people in space. His New Glenn rocket and New Shepard spacecraft could be flying tourists in a few years. You could experience the beauty of spaceflight, as astronaut Nicole Stott has.
The singular, most overwhelmingly impressive thing about it is that opportunity to, I think, experience our planet, experience the beauty out the window from that vantage point, from that perspective. And it is absolutely stunning.
But spaceflight is hard, so hard to do, whether publicly or privately funded. And it's also hard to convince the majority whether it's worth it.
But ultimately, it's about improving life here on Earth. And I think it gives us a better understanding of what is this home planet that we live on, how does it fit into this grander scheme, and we just seem to learn more and more about ourselves.
Dan, you've been covering the evolution of the space industry for more than 2 decades. If you were a betting man, who do you think has the edge when it comes to manned launches happening again from the Cape?
And that is a question, manned launches, that I think a lot of people really care about. Whoever it is, you know, let's get people off the ground from the Cape again for the first time since 2011. And there's 2 things here. You've got Boeing, which has a rocket, the Atlas V, with a spotless safety record, but a capsule, the Starliner, which has not been test launched. You've got SpaceX with a capsule, the Dragon, which has launched and landed several times, but a rocket that has had safety problems, big ones. Explosion on the launch pad, explosion in flight. So this is up to NASA whether to give permission for its astronauts to go on board one of those systems. And I think SpaceX may have a little bit harder time getting approval because of the safety problems in its background. So maybe Boeing goes first.
Yeah, can't have something catastrophic happen right out of the gate.
That's the obvious biggest concern.
Yeah, WESH 2 space expert Dan Billow. Dan, thanks. The coming months will be a big test for the private companies looking to make inroads into deep space. But on that patch of Earth nestled along the Atlantic, there's a belief they've already been tested and proven once again they have the right stuff. For the entire WESH 2 team, thanks for watching. Good night.